Thanks, Steph. I've brought the wrong glasses, so I'm going to have to sort of do this crazy switching glasses thing. Well, thanks for everybody for being here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the climate and this ecological emergency that we're all within. And like I said, I've got half an hour of that. I'd be really grateful if you sort of keep questions to the end. I appreciate there might be some really sort of forceful ones, and if there's any scientific questions, we can wait that right to the end, or find me at some point. We're not going to do a great deal of science, but we are going to sort of deal with that issue. And yeah, I need to issue a warning that it is quite serious a topic. I have this terrible tendency of deflecting my concerns with humour, and I have to. Well, it's the only way I can cope with it, I'm afraid, because I really struggle with this where I live and life. But before I start boring you and everything, I think it's useful if we can actually do some kind of connection with each other. And so, would it be possible for you to maybe turn in your seat to somebody you don't know, and just for a couple of minutes, introduce yourself. Tell that person why you're here and what you're hoping to get out of this. Just 2 minutes.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, they
I think they're going to leave.
I don't want to go there. No. Even though I just and if you're joining with other people, you could be arrested. I didn't even know about it, because although I really quite up to it's quite a commitment to go down, isn't it? I didn't
I know you're having a great conversation there, and I feel almost a little guilty to stop you. Maybe we should just, but you are going to have that opportunity to talk again. So I think I should carry on. So I think it's only fair to warn you about me. So Steph introduced me, obviously John Grant. I've been teaching here at Sheffield Hallam for this month, makes it 27 years. Yeah, I know. Damn, that is a long time. I got a pen and everything, a ballpoint pen. Anyway, I started my sort of scientific journey on this back in '86. In '88, Jim Hansen, head of NASA, explained to the world that he was 100% confident that climate change was happening in '88 and that we needed to do something about it. And from my point of view, that was it. When a top scientist from NASA says that, you don't debate the science anymore. You just pursue the solution. And so that's what I did. I did my second degree in sustainable communities and my third in environmental management and business and commerce in a vain attempt to understand how capitalism seeks to burn my planet. Sadly, I am still wanting for understanding that. So then worked here at the university. My research is in sustainable autonomous houses, design of those, and also urban food production. It is very clearly a focus on what we do, how we get through this. It is a positive solution to where we are going. But what we don't have is anybody listening to us, or me, or my colleagues. We do have the solutions. This is not a technical problem. This is a problem of action. So, those of you that were in the UK over the summer, 40 degrees. In the UK, this may be common in other countries, but in the UK, that word unprecedented keeps getting used. So it's not a problem for the future. It's not a problem for 2050. It's not a problem for 2100, whatever. This is a problem we are dealing with now. And we have this target from our government for net zero by 2050. But it was clearly stated that we had to peak our carbon emissions by 2025 by the United Nations. And we have this situation where the oil and gas companies are spending more than $100 million a day with regards to their activities. It is going to take an enormous effort to push back against that kind of resources, those kind of resources. Because we don't have that money, but we do have the people, we do have the commitment. And we are right. Their so-called carbon bombs are already detonating around the world. I wish I could come up with a more passive way of describing that. But what we need is not more talk and promises. What we need is action. And everybody knows that. So I'm guessing you're here because you've seen the headlines and you've read that. What are we going to do about it? And you realise that we are in a real crisis. There was a time when we were an alarm here in Extinction Rebellion. People are now awake and wondering what to do. But they're not here. But they are probably awake, I think, this summer across the planet. Hopefully, has made people realise the situation we are in. And we have a window to secure this future. But that window is shutting fast. All of my colleagues that I talk about, it is a very uncomfortable thing to talk about, but we still struggle knowing what needs to be done and knowing how to do it, but not having that. And then on top of all of this, of course, we have the cost of living crisis, we have energy prices going through the roof, we have a war, and all of these things sort of are connected. They are connected. And these challenges that we're going to face are underpinned by us having to keep our ecological life support system going. So although all of those things are critically important, I do not want to trivialise those, but if we don't have a viable planet, or if that planet changes our system so that it becomes so uncomfortable that we can't live on it, viable is a very complex thing. So we have this problem that if we burn all the fossil fuels, if we stopped burning all the fossil fuels tomorrow, we're still in a pipe. We're still heading towards the carbon in our atmosphere doesn't just disappear when we stop burning fossil fuels or releasing methane, natural gas as it's called. How unnatural is I haven't got time. And so, you know, here I am, 30 years along my journey of when I started studying this. And I remember in 1992 when everyone agreed that greenhouse gases were serious and in the Rio Earth Summit we should do something about that. But since that time, that 30 years, since 1990, the amount of carbon in our atmosphere that humans have put there has doubled. I'll let that sink in. So since we agreed that there was a problem and that we were going to do something about it, the amount of carbon humans have put in the atmosphere has doubled. That is not taking this seriously. And if you think 40 degrees was brutal, and it was, people died, fires were started, spare a thought, obviously, for what happened in Pakistan this year, and what happened in northern Canada last year, which recorded 49 degrees centigrade. I mean, I'm not going to trivialise people in Pakistan, but they have some skills how to deal with extreme weather. Not the way that they experienced it, but they have some skills there. Whereas people in Canada, they were just hammered as well. So, in the last 200 years, our world's warmed 1.2 degrees. It sounds so ridiculously small, doesn't it? 1.2 degrees. It's probably going to be 1.2 degrees cooler when you leave the building today than when you entered it to come to this talk. But when you're dealing with that on a planetary scale, it is massively significant. Because of course that's over the entire planet. That is a huge amount of energy. And so now we're seeing heat waves across the world. You know, wherever there are trees, there are forest fires. And, you know, I'm sorry to keep harping on about the past, but I think it's important that we realise that people have tried. So I'm just about old enough to remember when Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House in 1979. And tried and said his platform was, we need to live within our limits. And Reagan's platform is, there are no limits to human imagination. We know what the American people went for. It's all about the buzzword when it comes to elections, isn't it? It's all about that when it comes to politicians. It's not about the science. Jimmy Carter was right. Reagan was wrong. And they knew it, even back then. COP26 last year, they managed to mention coal for the first time ever. Wow. They promised to spend money, which they haven't. We promised a better future, and we see what our government is currently doing. Governments around the world have promised to protect the natural world. All the data points that we are still solidly in the sixth most significant dieback on our planet. An extinction level event is going on. We can't see it because we're in it, but in a geological time frame, this is happening within human lifetime scale, which is It's just never happened before. As it's going at the moment, it looks like fossil fuel production will double by 2030. Double. That's still the plan. Even though I started by saying the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, based in the United Nations, is saying that we should peak in 2.5 years. There's something wrong here. The scientists are saying one thing, and the politicians and the businesses are saying something else. There seems to be no intent for serious and committed action from any government, even though, Antonio Guterres, excuse my pronunciation, I'm terrible on this, he's trying to say that we are in an emergency. But we still have homes being affected by floods, and globally we should expect this change in our climate around the world to force as much as 3 billion people to move over the next 50 years. 3 billion people. On the 25th of November this year, we're going to officially hit 8 billion. The UN has decided that that's the day. It's a ridiculously inaccurate way of doing it, but that's when we hit 8 billion. So this is incredibly complicated. Our governments are confused, distracted, and quite honestly, in many cases paid for by these large corporations. But here we are. Government is, in many cases, displacing the responsibility for this on individuals, which is it's borderline criminal. Yes, it's important that we are not hypocritical in how we live our lives, clearly, but this is not an individual's problem. We need to be honest about where we sit in this and where the government's position and their responsibility for where we're going with this, and the opportunity that lies in this future, a future with millions of jobs, a huge amount of change, yes, but a positive change, a change where people are not terrified of what their energy bills are going to be. A future where people are not terrified of what their food might contain, or even if they have enough. So this is a real political agenda that we need to place that pressure, it's no individual in this room's fault. If you've been on an aeroplane, that's not what's burning our planet. We have no leadership on this. But they are really staggered by the nature of this challenge. I honestly think that many people in our political system want to do something. They just can't see, because the system is created to maintain stability. It is created to not allow change. So what? Extinction Rebellion. So Extinction Rebellion saw this problem that governments can't change because even the people that want to change are kept down by their own organisation. I myself, in 2018, I'm embarrassed to admit this, I gave up, right? I started in the latter part of the 1990s on this. I did everything that I thought I needed to do. And in 2018, temperatures just hit records around the world, and honestly, I was done. I just couldn't see where I could go from there. And then in the early part of 2019, this wonderful band of rebels showed me that there is another option to being a good scientist at home, publishing papers and looking for academic promotion, which is nice actually. I am blessed. But I couldn't deal with that anymore. I'd had enough of it. And then Extinction Rebellion showed me that, you know, direct action can maybe break that link, those links, those chains around government, so that they can blame us for having to change to make things better. And I'm okay with that. I've got broad shoulders. And since then, you know, I've been mixing with these people who I've, you know, all of them call friends now, supportive and helpful where they can. It's been a challenge over COVID, obviously. But you know, I've met people, doctors, nurses, engineers, as well as my colleagues, and, you know, people who say, oh, John, I just work in a shop. It's like that's like you're guilty about things like that. Normal people. No, those are the people, you know, that we need to make a connection to. And here in my university, of course, I connect with my students who I rage at. Probably, I should watch my language more, but you know, it's an ongoing challenge to that. But you know, parents, grandparents, my own children, 22 and 18, I struggle with this, but I can see that there is that opportunity. And the people that I mix with here in Extinction Rebellion are willing to give as much as they are able. But it's a very broad spectrum. And things are changing. People are awake now. There are concerns, and although, you know, Extinction Rebellion often gets sort of policies directed against it and the like, there was an attempt at making us illegal. You know, I'm not sure why. I've never seen any, you know, level of violence or anything, but our agenda to give people a voice and protect the natural world. But it's changed now. We were the alarm, the fire alarm, saying, the world's on fire. And the good news is, there are enough people that are now awake. But the bad news is, a great deal of them are like, oh, I want to do something, what do I do? So the 2019 rebellion, of which I was, for the first time in my life, on the wrong side of the police line, was the most terrifying and uplifting experience of my life, without a doubt. I'm still a scientist, I still work to the solutions of this, but also believe now that we have to show people around us that it is an emergency, and as such, we must act like it's an emergency. So me just writing papers in my university implies that business as usual is acceptable, and it isn't. And I'm beginning now with regards to, sorry, I need to keep track. Our beginning of what we're talking about. So we've got this huge challenge. We know that the people in power either don't want to or can't change, but it's absolutely critical that the traditional methods of campaigning are shifted now. Walking in the streets with banners is part of that. And I'm not saying that, you know, that's a waste of time, but we have to change that narrative now, that story. It has to alter. And in order to change that story, we have to have more people. I absolutely believe that when we explain this, if I was able to talk to people, we would have those people join us when they realise that we are not extreme, and we want to give people a voice, and we want to protect this planet and the residents of that. But it is the numbers that we are lacking now. The media attention is interesting, but it is manipulated often. We just rarely get a fair say. The hypocrisy card is played. Oh dear. Sorry about that. Somebody's wanted, we're not going to leave, we're not going to leave. So the climate emergency was one of the more positive aspects of our 2019 rebellion. The government accepted it. Well, Parliament accepted it. Thank you for the correction. But yes, this government is worse than a chocolate fireguard, as my gran would say. So we have to go for the big win now. And it requires our government to get their act together somehow. We need ambitious strategies that include renewable energy and reducing the amount of energy that we consume as a society, certainly here in the West. And the richest 1%, who actually consume about 50% of our resources, need to be brought to light. Because wouldn't it be great if we could get that 1% to actually just become average users? Because then we'd get 49% of our stuff back. It'd be as simple as that. Yeah, okay. I'm an academic, I'm allowed to make mathematical projections like that. So we have this idea that we have to reach a social tipping point. That's why I'm here today. And that's why we're mobilising this project called 3.5. Because it turns out that when you reach 3.5% of a population that is looking for a change, or those 3.5% are looking for a change, you have a very good chance. There is no certainty in this, right? There is no certainty in this. But we need to reach that 3.5%. And so that's why we're trying to make connections with the local groups and trying to make things happen with regards to that. But before I complete now, I want to give an opportunity to speak to our, there she is, because I've been talking long enough, without a doubt. And just a few minutes with somebody that I look up with, even though she's slightly shorter than me.
Hi, thank you. My name's Hazel. I've just come along tonight to explain a bit about my involvement with XR. I'm a secondary school teacher. I teach French and German and Spanish. I'm also a mum to 2 young boys. I've been living in Sheffield for about 2 years, and I really love it here. I love the access to nature that we have in the city, and also the sort of grassroots political activity that goes on in Sheffield. In terms of my journey to climate activism, I was raised by a German mum who was always very aware of recycling, bringing a cotton bag, very ahead of her time with that. So I was always quite conscious of, my individual actions with regards to taking care of the planet. Both my children were born in Singapore. When my first child was born in 2015, the quality of air in Singapore was so bad because of the burning of the rainforest in Indonesia, which is cleared for palm oil plantations. The quality of air in Singapore is usually quite good, but at times of the year it gets really bad because of that. And at the time when I came out of hospital, the air quality was so bad that the advice was not to bring babies or children outside at all, that it could damage their lungs. And I would say for me that was a real sort of wake-up call when you literally cannot take your baby outside because of the quality of air. It really lays the facts of climate breakdown, and the destruction of our livable planet in front of your eyes. And I was also, of course, thinking about the fact that there are, mums and babies living much closer to that burning in Indonesia, for whom that problem is even more acute. So that got me thinking much more about the climate crisis and reading more about climate crisis, and of course, realising that individual actions are not enough at all. And at this time, a friend invited me to something called a climate conversation in Singapore, which was an evening at someone's home with about 10 people discussing the climate crisis, really so that we could understand the climate crisis and understand how to be part of meaningful change. And I liked that model for discussing system change and discussing what is happening to our world. And so I hosted my own climate conversation with my friends, and then I went on to train as a facilitator for this grassroots climate organisation in Singapore called Climate Conversations. And then when my family and I were thinking of returning to the UK, I was sort of wondering how will I engage in climate action in the UK? And I heard the Extinction Rebellion, on the news. I had the mum of a friend in Singapore whose mum was very active with Extinction Rebellion who talked to me about them. And I thought I really like the urgency with which Extinction Rebellion are, communicating this cause. So when I got back to the UK, just ahead of the August Rebellion last year, I joined Extinction Rebellion Sheffield. And I've been pleased to discover that there are lots of different ways to be involved. I've been out on the streets as part of a rebellion. I was in the COP26 protests in Glasgow last year. But also I found other ways to contribute, for example, like planning our May Monday meetings. I've also written articles in the local press on Extinction Rebellion Sheffield, and what we're up to. There's also lots of other groups within Extinction Rebellion Sheffield, just to say, so things like a Samba group, an art group, a fundraising group. So there's lots of ways to be involved. And Exile Sheffield also do a lot to support other good campaigns and local causes that are linked. I'd say that despite the fact that the reason that brought me to Extinction Rebellion, that our cause is infuriating and heartbreaking, witnessing this destruction of our livable planet, and inaction by our governments. I would say that I find it empowering to be part of a community where we're on the same page in our understanding of this. It feels empowering to be part of that community of people who are committed, doing their best to bring about change. And also for me, being part of Exile has been social and helped me to make friends in Sheffield. So I'll hand back over to John.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's just fantastic about the many different people that are here. And because we, as an organisation, don't have all the answers, we have to put that out there. That clearly, there has to be a process of how you try and come to those answers. But it has to be a backwards and forwards process. And what we do and how we do that, to improve on it, to learn from what we've done. It's really challenging when we have sort of events that go out there. And there are a number of people that are really active in that. We have plans to go on with this. There is hope that we're going to get 100,000 people onto the streets on the 21st of April next year, and the people that have been involved in those actions, one of which is this weekend, I'm sure. Probably a little short notice for that, but there is a bit of an action going on in London this weekend. But the people that I've met in those have been so consistently amazing and inspiring, and I would like to, at this point, is bring another one of our members here, who's got a slightly different sort of experience in this, and ask him to explain his position here. Please.
Hello. My name's Fergus. I'm 26. Quite like that John here has been teaching in his current job for longer than I've been alive.
Thanks, mate.
So I guess I come at this from a bit of a different perspective from that. I want to give my own testimonial because of how important XR is to me. Over the last few years, XR has meant the world to me. My involvement in XR has been many different things, and I'm very, very passionate about this group. I really hope that from this you can all come to the same decision as myself to get involved in Extinction Rebellion. But really it's about much, much more than that. What I really hope is that all of you, in all of your own brilliantly neurodiverse and different ways, can experience your own individual journey that gets you involved in any and all kinds of environmental activism in whatever shape or form that takes, whichever group or tactic or activity you choose to channel your efforts into. And for me, the main answer to that is Extinction Rebellion. That journey for me started with learning all about the harm that we've already caused our planet. I studied ecological and environmental sciences at university, where I obviously learned in a lot of detail about the science of the climate and ecological emergency. And then, importantly, it was learning about the scale of our failure to tackle these harms and the prediction of how much harm we're going to cause in the near future. And my journey has involved learning so much about what activism looks like and feels like, and why activists do what they do, learning about the history of activism and what role activism can play in the future. And it's about learning a deep sense of love and rage and what I can do with these emotions to try and make my own difference. Before XR, I had a small experience of activism, a few marches in Edinburgh, being brave enough to spend one single night in a student occupation to divest from fossil fuels. I don't identify as having been particularly exposed to activism in any way in my upbringing. And then, 1 year after university, I was watching news and saw Extinction Rebellion's first major London action and thought to myself that I just want to be a part of that. And that's what I did. Since then my involvement in XR has been so many different things, and it's brought me so much joy and excitement and love and anger and fear and sadness and challenges and experiences and every emotion that you can think of. I started off as a rebel that simply went along to the major national actions. I went to London, I went to Leeds, and I just went along to join the numbers on the streets, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I turned up and I soaked up so many different brilliant experiences and joined in whatever was happening around me. If anything, this is the most important type of activist we need. We need those numbers on the streets. It was never like a major commitment in my life, it was just a thing. I had lots of other things in my life, but I did it and it was brilliant. And then the next major step was when I moved to Sheffield for a new job. I decided I'll join the local group for the first time, because simply I hoped it'd be a way to meet people in a city where I didn't know anyone. And this goal of finding friends has achieved far more than I could have hoped for in XR Sheffield. And that is still what XR is first and foremost to me. It's a community of utterly amazing people that become utterly close friends. Close friends amongst my peers, and close friends amongst people that are 3 times my age. I always loved say how these intergenerational friendships, are just brilliant. And that from there, the little group opened up so many doors to what you can do in activism, what I can do, and it opened up having a go at doing samba and outreachy things and local actions and arts and band making and so many solidarity actions with other groups like I would never have got involved in otherwise, and doing police station support and engaging in internal discussions and dialogues and learning and all that. From there, I got involved in the spicy actions. And I've walked countless roads now, and factories and other things. I've climbed bamboo structures. I've blockaded an Amazon distribution centre on Black Friday for 17 hours during the very extreme conditions of Storm Arwen, if any of you remember that. That was an experience. What a brilliant action. We simultaneously blockaded Amazon distribution centres, about 50% of Amazon's capacity in the UK, but also ones in America and France and some other countries on Black Friday. I've painted a government building with a fire extinguisher, great fun. I scaled scaffolding outside the Houses of Parliament. Now I've been in police custody 4 times. I've gotten away with 2 of them scot-free, and the 3rd is due in court next month, so we'll see what happens with that. And then most significantly, I've been on a journey of giving more and more of my time working for XR and coordinating things. Now I'm an internal coordinator of XR Sheffield, XR Youth Sheffield. XR Sheffield, which I helped to create last year. And my community of friends has built beyond Sheffield and beyond XR to include so many activists all around the country, inside XR, inside other movements. Friends that I identify as a chosen family. Why do I do all this? It's a case of I can't switch off from this understanding of the harm we're causing our planet. This idea of people, everyone's been exposed to it now, everyone knows this. How other people can know this and then carry on business as usual, I just don't get. And so you need to do something about it. And whether that could mean these tactics. You think they work, or they're going to be successful or make a difference, so there's a whole debate in that, and you can be a part of that and have your opinions on that and have whatever you think on that, and I hope that they will and they do. And even if they don't, it's just a brilliant way to say fuck you. So, fuck you to, not in my name, to the harm that we're causing, so I hope you.
So we're almost done. We finished this half an hour. Flies by. Perhaps a little bit more, but hey, please forgive me. So here we are. We're about to remind our government about direct democracy. So this is the key point here. This is what we've been building to. This idea that people have the power still in this wonderful country that I love, but it seems that our government is incapable of acting. But we believe that ordinary people, when they are shown the evidence, when they are skilled, when they know what we know, and they know about the solutions, that this isn't just rage, this is about a better world, that common sense prevails there. And this idea of people gathering together in what we call citizens' assemblies is a tried and effective method of direct democracy. This is a reality for many years now. Not just this climate thing. This is these what are called, sort of vicious problems. Problems that have a number of elements for their solution that we can work to. So we have politicians that are incapable of being honest about what we're facing and the situation and the action that is required. So now, this idea of asking you to ask us any questions you might have regarding that, how you might get involved, what this idea of direct action and involvement and direct democracy might be, how we can get people that are terrified about how they're going to heat their homes or feed their children when 1 in 4 children are in actual poverty. These statistics are just crushing. And all this time, my country has been slowly pushed in a direction that is unnecessary. So this is our fight. We know what the solutions are. We know what we need to do to make this happen. Whatever time and energy you might have to help us, we will accept gratefully. And it just left for me to say thank you for attending, and we will now break up into these groups where we can discuss this further and then come back and ask that question. Any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you, Hazel and Fergus. I just want to say, Fergus is amazing, but I don't want you to all think you've got to be spraying paint over the buildings or getting up bamboo structures for 17 hours, because there are many, many roles in Extinction Rebellion, and you don't have to be prepared to be arrested. It would be, so this talk is part of something called Project 3.5, which is the outreach program, and we're trying to build up the numbers for the big rebellion in April. I don't know if people have also told you, there's actually a rebellion in London this weekend, which it's very short notice, but if people were able to go down and join that, you can find more details on the Extinction Rebellion UK website. We haven't got time to tell you all the details now, but it would be great if people wanted to go along, and joining in a rebellion is such an amazing way to really understand what XR is all about.